Good morning, listeners.
Good morning, Ammar.
Apologies, I've just realised I haven't plugged in my laptop, so inevitably it's going to die. But are you all right?
Yes, I'm good. Yourself?
Very good. Good. Nice to see you. To see you, nice.
It's you don't have your brigadier uniform on this morning.
It was. Have you promoted me already?
You're not looking quite as menacing as what you did last week.
Have you promoted me already?
Hmm?
Have you promoted me already? It's, yeah, no, it was interesting wearing it, I must admit.
And how was it? How was it going in into Sunderland, Ammar, with your brigadier's uniform on?
Yeah, it was, as I say.
Did you get any comments? Did you get any comments? Did you encounter the NF or anything like that?
No. I don't. Do they still exist?
I think so. I think the NF exists in Sunday. I remember when we used to go there, beware of the NF. I mean, it was just it's crazy.
Yeah, but I think they were existed. Sorry, I've got a faulty charger and I need to do something with it. I just haven't got round to doing what I need to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah, so the NF, the National Front, as they used to be called back in the day. I mean, they did exist for sure. And it was one of those things that that we were made aware of to be very, very careful when we are out and about in Sunderland. And it was interesting with your brigadier uniform, they might kind of look at you with slightly differently than what they would do an ordinary man walking down the street.
Yeah. Yeah, probably, possibly. I mean, apologies. Let's Martha, you're going to have to edit this, and apologies, listeners. I was just trying to fix some technical stuff, but what do we need to do? I need to try and change which slides I'm on, and do that, pick that up, change that to there, and share my screen to that, and do that, and what can you see, Jalf?
That round circle that's going round and around. Now I can see.
Can you see?
Yes, now I can see what's going on.
Wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, good morning, listeners. You're listening to Ammar and
Jalf,
live on our weekly radio show and live video show.
Each week we'll bring you news, views, and one or two clues from the business world.
Yeah, Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities.
We'll be talking shop quite literally, not just corner shops. Whether you're looking to start a business, have an existing business, or you just want to talk business, we can help.
We can help. We can help. And we do help. Lots of people. So, yeah, Jalf, interestingly, I felt a bit uncomfortable wearing the uniform. And I'm very happy to have this conversation with you and our listeners and viewers. And for a number of reasons, not because it's an uncomfortable thing to wear, it's just an unusual thing to see me, someone of colour, and someone who's breaking down barriers. So as I drove to Sunderland last week, and it's funny because you were like, oh yeah, Sunderland's this and Sunderland's that and all of these types of different things. And I know we were having a bit of a jest.
We always speak in jest. I mean, look, I mean,
But you
it's
need to
not
be careful what you listen. It's not banter, Jaff, right?
really
Remember that. There's no such
what
thing as banter now.
there isn't. Well,
Yeah.
that's discredit to the world and the people that are making these new social interaction kind of I don't know, rules, because banter is so important in life. You know, I think there should be limits.
It depends what your definition of banter, and we need to talk about the Azim Rafiq interview, and interestingly how then someone's found something that he said 10 years ago, and that's
55
now
years
become
ago.
that's
And yeah,
become frontline news
yeah,
as
of
well.
course, and that could be just a comment, just in jest. And yes, I have to, you know, wholeheartedly apologize for something that I said 55 years ago. Circumstances were different. It didn't even mean anything. You were just speaking in. Imagine, Ammar, that all the things that we've said in jest, if they were recorded, and people wanted to make a political point about them. I mean, come on. It's just it's incredible how these things come out of the woodwork when they need to be, to fulfill a particular political message.
Well, it's just narrative. It's changing the narrative, isn't it? Is partly what the challenges are. Anyway, once again, we need to be very careful. We are in slightly influential positions, so need to be mindful. You cannot say anything about anyone in that regard and think that it was appropriate to do so. Full stop. Whatever anybody's color or religion is, that isn't banter, right? And particularly if it's offensive and harmful. Now,
well, even talking about Sunderland.
No, I wasn't talking about Sunderland. Anyway, coming back to Sunderland, I was wearing a uniform, drove into, and you know, one of the things that I've always found interesting is that for whatever excuse me, for whatever reason, local authorities put ethnic community groups into the most deprived and disadvantaged areas where inevitably it's going to cause community challenges. Now, if I look at and think about the mosque that my late father helped establish in Elzik, right, and the people around Elzik at that time, you'd be scared to go into the mosque. You'd be scared coming out of the mosque. And you know, many occasions, you'd be racially abused and at times beaten up going to the mosque because of where the mosque was, where the local authority had given a place. And if you look at the Bangladeshi community in and around Scepter Street and places like that, Jaff, it's interesting, isn't it, that for whatever reason, the ethnic communities have always been put into the most discriminatory places where it creates further division. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that, you know, as I was driving into the community centre in Sunderland, all around there was a bit, it's not a huge estate, but there's an estate there. All around there, all I could see hanging out of windows, flying and such like, were St. George's flags.
Uh-huh. That's a nice thing.
And I remember, well, I love the St. George's flag, you know, England, but it's how it's portrayed and what it stands for. And you mentioned National Front, and the National Front used to fly the flags. And Tom Watson? No,
Yeah.
not Tommy. Was it?
Tommy something.
Tommy.
Let's just call him Tommy.
Tommy Gunn. So Tommy Gunn, obviously. Anyway, it's interesting that people do that. So I was there. It was fantastic to see young Asian voices, I was wearing a uniform, and even people in that room found it. I almost felt slightly, I don't know what the right word is. I just can't think of it.
Underdressed.
No, it was more people felt, I was, and this is an assumption, and it might be right or wrong, but it was almost as if other people felt uncomfortable because I was sat there in a uniform as well.
Well, I mean, colonels and stuff, I mean, you're in a position to, obviously it's an imposing look, isn't it? It's meant to be an imposing look. So I think if you're young and someone comes in, they think that, yeah, this is a soldier, you know, he's been on the battlefield, he's killed thousands of people with his bare hands, and they're naturally going to be a bit intimidated by you and that look.
Well, no, I don't think it was that at all. And, whilst I appreciate, and obviously I'm, feeling all manly, although I don't think you can feel manly anymore. The point is and was that just people found it odd. But and then upon reflection, I thought, great. I thought, good, because we're breaking down barriers. We're getting people to think, oh my gosh, there's somebody of color in a uniform and they're here with other people and celebrating communities. And Ram was, he's a lovely guy. I love what the young Asian voices are doing in Sunderland. I think it's wonderful. And, he was so grateful and complimentary of the work that we've done, Jalf, through our various campaigns, inclusion by default and everything else. And he made reference to us collaborating more and all of that. And it was good. It was really good. And I had various conversations with a number of people. There was the reporter from the BBC, Look North, and various other community leaders and public sector leaders and such like. So anyway, I was there. So I went there. I then, where else did I go? I had various other meetings and such like. And then from that, I had the uniform on pretty much all day. And it was just interesting because I get treated. Surprisingly, I was really surprised. I get treated far better when I'm wearing my suit, and personally, I feel a lot more comfortable wearing my suit. But I think it's important for me to be out and about, wearing a uniform, representing and leading, as a cheerleader for our armed forces. So that was good. And then on Sunday, we had the Remembrance Parade in Ponteland, and I had. I'd been invited to Newcastle, I'd been invited over to South Shields, but I stayed here, stayed local. This is where I live. This is where the business is. This is where we have our base. And I just wore a normal, I wore like a suit. And I turned up and they said, we thought you were going to come in your uniform. We would have liked to have seen you in your uniform. But I was like, oh, all right. Anyway, it was wonderful because Yusuf and I then sort of were behind the military, and we marched through the town with a few hundred people, and we marched. When we were up, we were up, and when we were down, we were down, and when we were neither halfway up, we were neither up or down.
Is that the song, Ammar?
That's a Grand Old Duke of York, isn't it?
All right. I don't know.
Do you not remember the Grand Old Duke of York? He had 10,000 men.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, Back to the Future. So here we are, and it's an interesting week it has been, and I think we need to talk a little bit more about racism and Azim Rafiq. But before we do that, the wonderful Martha has pulled together our business topic of the week, and it's called OKRs. Jalf, have you heard of OKRs?
Nope.
So OKR stands for Objectives and Key Results.
Okay.
And it's a way of defining goals and measuring progress and success as you set out to achieve them. The way it works is you set an objective and then define the key results. That will mean that you have reached your objective. So, very simple example of that is the objective is I want to learn more about OKRs. A key result would be read at least one article on OKRs. So as you can see, the objective is more of a high-level goal, while the key result breaks it down into smaller measurable goals. So it's like, how am I going to get there? So a better example would be objective is to increase customer satisfaction. So I want to increase, I'm a business and I want to increase, or an organization, and I want to increase customer satisfaction. Key result is achieve net promoter score of 4 or above, or resolve all complaints within 48 hours, reduce customer churn rate by 30%. It is important to remember that the key results are not specific tasks that need to be completed, but rather the way you measure the success of your objective. Tasks should instead be designed to fulfill the results. So measuring success, OKRs can also be used to provide a figure on how successfully you are completing them. As each OKR is reviewed, score the key result sort of from a 0 to a 1. Example of the above. So if after 2 months you haven't sorted your customer satisfaction, they would score 0. But if they have, you'd score 1. So using OKRs, it's a different mechanism, Jalf, to KPIs. You've heard of KPIs, haven't you? Like key performance indicators.
Yeah.
So this is just a different approach to that, and it helps you drive action, and helps you identify how to grow, as opposed to just measuring how you're getting on. So it is a tool that we encourage and sort of say to everybody, look at this approach. This is how you would do it, and this is where and why. So anyway, that's the business topic of the week. So headlines this week, Jalf. Funnily enough, and there's absolutely nothing funny about it, to be honest, but the bomber in Liverpool, that hospital is where our son was born.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I slept on the floor of that hospital for sort of 10 nights.
Oh my goodness.
And then that hospital, he was there for sort of 2.5, 3 weeks. He wasn't meant to survive, is what he wasn't meant to do. He wasn't meant to come sort of 9 weeks early, obviously, and he wasn't meant to come on Christmas Eve. But I spent Christmas and New Year, as in, and obviously the wife wasn't well or right, so she was in hospital because she'd had a torrid birth. But yeah, I think to myself, as in, what a horrible, nasty thing to do, to even consider sort of going into a place like that. So there's no excuse to go into any place, right? But a woman's hospital where it's babies, like the maternity ward of the RVI, Jalf.
It's just baffling, mind-boggling, the mentality of certain individuals. It really is. I mean, they're absolutely warped people, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like mentally disturbed people.
Undoubtedly. So we don't know what we don't know, and ultimately, the what was interesting, because one of the wife's very close friends, we've got a number of friends who were in there, so from Liverpool that work there in the maternity unit and the birthing unit, so pediatric nurses and things like that, and they were at work. So sad, so sad. Anyway, what's interesting is the young person had, well, I'm saying the young person anyway, the person had converted to Christianity and been baptized.
So it wasn't a Muslim on this occasion.
Well, so Christian convert, Al Swaleem, was a passenger in a taxi when his homemade device exploded shortly before 11 on Remembrance Sunday. It's yeah, but he lived with a couple of people. He was like apparently a really nice person, and all of that. Well, clearly not a really nice person, was he?
Yeah, clearly a psychotic individual.
Yeah. So that was that. High Speed 2, have you followed the news much there, Jeff?
Not really. I did hear about that, and look, where they're at. The first thing that sprung in my mind is that I don't fathom how the government has just found about a £1 trillion in furlough payments, paying people to sit at home over the last X amount of months, but they can't now fork out the money to get the train line sorted, especially linking the vital part of the north of England to London. And why would you not do it? Why would you not make that happen? I mean, I'm disappointed, to say the least. I just feel that they have made a decision because they're in London. They've just ignored the north, and then they'll give that political talk of, and of course we haven't ignored the north, A, B, C, and D. So I find it very baffling, that decision.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The last couple of weeks for the Prime Minister in particular, because he has been called out on a variety of things. There was that whole sleaze thing that was being brought up, and then reneging on a number of deals. That said, they are investing quite significantly in rail. It is far easier and better to simply sort and extend the rail that exists. Already there, Jeff?
I mean, but Ammar, the HS2 is the HS2. I mean, look, we get to London in quite quick time. 3 hours isn't bad, but if they were going to do something which is going to significantly improve, or would have improved that for Northerners, and it wasn't going to come past Newcastle anyway, it would have been connecting the whole country a lot better, and future-proofing it for another 100 years, another 200 years. And it's a devastating decision, I think, for the north of England.
Oh, undoubtedly, undoubtedly. So I think the key thing for me is that we need to lobby and get better infrastructure from here to Leeds, because all that's happened is there's improvements from and up until Leeds and Manchester, and those train journeys are being reduced, are going to be reduced quite significantly. £96 billion, a lot of money, John. Then you can't be dismissive of £96 billion. And the difference in the times and the benefits between HS2 and the proposed upgrade is we're talking about 2 or 3 minutes. So you're talking about journey times currently taking, for example, 40 minutes. With HS2, they might have been reduced to 22 minutes with this rail upgrade, it's going to be 24 minutes, right? So you're saving. So the difference, look at what the benefit is as opposed to the negative. And I think that's something to consider. The other thing is the amount of cost. I mean, HS2, the cost of it versus the benefit. The cost benefit analysis seems to have never been done effectively. So we don't know, genuinely how much it was going to go on to cost, and the amount of disruption to people's lives, to towns, to places, to spaces, all of these things. Whereas actually, if you just improve some of the infrastructure that exists already, right? If you dropped in a magnetic train, right? If you dropped in a magnetic train along the East Coast main line, right? You could get to London in an hour and a half.
Really? What's a magnetic train?
Well, it's like the bullet that they have in sort of Japan and China and places like that.
But is that on the same line though, man? Do you not need different tracks to do that though?
Well,
do you not
you
need,
don't have tracks.
I remember your friend Tony, who did the
Dubai Metro and things like that.
In Dubai. I remember having a talk with him when he was in the UK, and his point was that, I mean, you have to build it on raw concrete for the stability, and I think if it's built on earth, then obviously there's only you can only go so fast. Whereas if you have a build like they do in Dubai, you have a concrete base, and then you need that as a foundation. I think that was the biggest challenge that he thought that you would have if there's a HS2 going on. So would they not have to redo the grid, redo the actual train line?
Look, it's so the challenge you have is, right, it's like once you've got something there already, of course it is so much harder to try and do anything with it, right? Of course it is. But if I said to you, and this is the biggest problem in behavioral science, if I said to you, do you want a marshmallow now, or do you want 10 marshmallows tomorrow? Well, maybe not tomorrow, but in a year's time, you're going to take the marshmallow now. Even though the 10 marshmallows is 100 times better, and they're going to taste better, and you're going to do, that's the mentality of us. So my point around that is, you undoubtedly, the amount of work and effort involved in upgrading that existing line is relatively significant. But you don't, if you plan it effectively, if you do it, sort of innovatively, you could look to reduce it. But the benefits of doing it, it's like, look, if places like Dubai, India, all of these other places and spaces can build cities like within a year, right? Why can't we upgrade our train line?
Yeah, well, it's a very valid point. I think it's one of those things. They just have to give it the priority and focus and make it happen. And that's the job of the government to do that, instead of spending all these millions of pounds in the planning stages of it and then ultimately saying, no, it's not happening. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
So yeah, I don't know is the honest answer. So HS2, ultimately, it's a big challenge for us. We are once again losing out, Jalf, and that's a big issue. Yeah, that's a really big issue. Let's talk about Azim Rafiq.
I mean, I haven't followed it ridiculously. I don't follow the news too much, but what I understand that obviously in Yorkshire, there was so much institutional racism within that cricket club, and ultimately the way that he was treated was absolutely horrifying. And for me, the way that I look at it, somebody just had to find a little something, little bit of dirt on him, and hit and make that the highlight in the media, as opposed to the issue in hand. And I think they've just tried to they just wanted to have the last laugh. That's how it looks to me, as though that it's being done. I mean, let's just put his comments that he would have made to one side, because it's not right. But again, and he's apologized for it. But he's apologized probably for something that was just said so much in jest. It wasn't done. It's a totally different situation to the institutional racism that he had experienced from the top level all the way to the bottom. Just a group of probably old-fashioned aristocratic men. That's just how they were back in the day. And we've experienced it. We've seen it, Ammar, when we've been to these clubs, and we've seen the mentality, and it's just been a whole load of that. And basically, it was probably a closed shop, and it was probably just goes on. But on this instance, they were exposed, and they rightfully, everyone is resigned from it. But I think the only way forward of something like that is, look, cricket is an international sport. And if you imagine, you take color out of cricket, you don't have cricket. I mean, so it may have been born in the UK, but cricket is a sport, especially it's huge in the subcontinent. And you need to have a dynamic group of individuals at the head of these organizations that respect cricket for what it is. It's a universal, I mean, all sport, it's universal. And you can't have a group of all aristocratic men with that type of view being leaders of a cricket club. I mean, those days should have been long gone, and now they've been forced to resign. And they should get a young, dynamic team to go and take over that. It's Yorkshire, Ammar. Imagine how many people in Yorkshire would go, Bradford and Leeds. How many Asians would go really with having such hunger for cricket, and how many more Nasser Hussains you'd be able to create. But if you're going to get racism, why would you want to go to these places for?
That's interesting. Look, I absolutely agree with you. He had a horrific experience, and it's outrageous what happened. There is no justification. Just when our late parents well, obviously, apologies, but I mean, when my late parents and your late father came here decades ago, right? At that same time, there were signs in bed and breakfasts, in hostels, because that's where you'd stay, and it would have no blacks, no Irish, and no Pakis.
I mean,
we're laughing about it, right?
Look,
my point is this, Jeff, is racism and prejudice has existed, right? And I'm just contextualizing this a little bit. And I remember, that no one in our community. So I was talking about the mosque. We were talking about areas of high level of concentration of ethnic communities, and they tended to be put in places where there was high levels of deprivation and unemployment and racism and discrimination. I mean, we lived on Beaconville Street, and I remember Shane and his brother, and they had Alsatians. And
Alsatians, man.
It was like they were like racist dogs, is what they were. But they weren't racist dogs. It was just the owners of them were racist.
Yeah, and they groomed the dogs. They groomed the dogs in that way, though, Ammar.
Oh no, they did. They did.
Go and chase the packies down. Gets, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just what they did.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm sharing all of this is like, right, Jeff. There's within the communities, and we've experienced racism. In fact, we still do, and people call it unconscious bias, right? People don't know they're doing it, but they do, and they are, right? There is that aspect of racism. I mean, I remember raising an issue with the local authority a few years back, and all of a sudden, I was like, because I had raised it, it was like, oh well, listen, you can't raise this. We're going to come after you. So as soon as you stick your head above the parapet, right, they're going to make you out to be. And it's so sad that these type of approaches exist. But you know, they still do. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. Conversely, I have so many positive experiences, right? Because part of integration, part of inclusion is understanding. If somebody doesn't understand something or someone, Jeff, right, then the likelihood is everything that they believe and how they behave is based on presumptions and assumptions. So, let's just reflect on one of our experiences. One of the first dinners we'd gone to, right, like sort of 15, 16 years ago, was up at this country house in the middle of nowhere, right, up in Northumberland. And we'd got to this dinner and we got a bit lost and we turned up and there was, who was it? Was it me, you? Who else was there? There must have been, well, there must have only been like,
I think it was the two of us, Ammar.
Yeah, so we turn up at this dinner and it is primarily, would you suggest average age 80, 70, 80?
Probably 60s, 60 to 80, 60 to 70, yeah, 60 to 75.
Okay, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
The point is some of these people would have known India before the partition. Some of these people have grown up in the war in a different society where white people ruled the world and ethnic people didn't, right? That's just the way society was. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm saying that's how society was. Now, outwardly and clearly, you know, we're only talking about sort of 15 years ago, right?
Well, I think it wasn't as long as that. I think it was even 10 years ago, you know.
No. Look, man, Jeff, we are now in 2021. It was 2005, 2006.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, I remember the day very clearly. But okay, go on.
And we walked in, and it was like, how uncomfortable was that? And then the headline speaker just so happened to be the ex chief of security services. You know, MI5, MI6, all of that. And at the time, the biggest threat wasn't Russia. The biggest threat wasn't any other Cold War. It wasn't anything that was happening in Europe or whatever else. The biggest threat was Pakistan. And all of a sudden, everyone started to move away from us. And she talked more and more. Now, my point about that is actually we're seeing some of this in jest, right? But it's that type of messaging, isn't it? It's that type of communication that reinforces the assumptions and the presumptions. Because all of a sudden, you know, whether you are the most integrated, most British Pakistani as me, I was still a Pakistani, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course, and in those situations where the environment is so serious, we couldn't even look at each other and even like smirk or
Sort of
smile.
laugh. Yeah,
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 you
yeah.
can't even do it because ordinarily
It's
you
like,
could.
because it's
Ordinarily,
like,
look, we're kind of very, very broad-minded individuals, and we've got a, you know, we can survive, and we've been in so many different situations and scenarios, collectively, individually, whether it's the school scenarios or whether it's going to parliament and being with so many different individuals, and I do feel that we've always fitted in any environment that we've been to, and we can go in and fit in, we can get on and deal with any situation. But I do remember clearly that particular one. It was a very, very intense environment. The lady, she wasn't going to hold back her speech because there's two brown people in the audience, because she is being the leader and the head of MI5. If you imagine, you've got so much passion and pride, and you have to have a level of ferocity that we are this and no one's gonna, we are the dog's bollocks. And I think she came across very, very, she was fierce the way she spoke. And
she was M or whatever it is from James Bond is what she was.
She's a real life M, and they are the ones that give the instructions to kind of, the headlines that we see in the paper, whether this is happening or that is happening, and all of that stuff that we see in James Bond. It might be a little bit glorified, but I think the it's still more or less exactly it is how it is in the real world. It's just they just glorify and make it into a movie, but those systems and mechanics are already in place. And like you say, she was the M, the real life M.
Oh, undoubtedly. But it's my point is the narrative generally at every single level, right? What do you think creates racism or division, right? Is A, lack of understanding, but B, picking out significant differences and reinforcing them. So all of a sudden, the narrative generally over the last sort of 10, 15 years, right, in particular, has once again been Muslim terrorist. It's never ever been terrorist. It's been Muslim terrorist.
Yeah, that's just
I'm sat in Sunderland, right? And I'm using this as a real life example. I am sat in Sunderland. My community, my reach, my environment is all white. It's all white, right? And actually, all I've ever heard my grandparents say is they closed the shipyards down, right? They closed the shipyards down, and I lost my jobs. And then the only people who have got jobs are Asian people working, and they come and took our jobs because they opened up takeaways, restaurants, taxi drivers. They done all the jobs that no one wanted to do, but they come and took all the jobs away. So all I've ever heard for 2 or 3 generations is that narrative.
Yeah.
And because the state had paid out and done whatever, so all I've ever grown up in is this environment of these people aren't good people. And all I ever see on the news and everybody else sharing these Tommies of the world and everything else is Muslim terrorist, Muslim terrorist. I don't know the difference between a guy wearing a turban and a guy from Sri Lanka or whatever it is. They're all Muslim because they're all colored.
And
they're all terrorists.
That was just look, that's part of the strategy that was actually in place by the people that authorized that, whether it be the media or whether it be collectively in the government after 9/11. They had to have the symbolic images of all the Muslims being terrorists and this, that, and other. So this has just come out of that's come out of being politically, that's how they wanted to create that image of Muslims, and it's been going ever since. And I think, you know, you get a handful of, you get some idiotic, psychologically disturbed individuals who go and do a crazy thing. Then you have to brand the entire kind of 2 billion people with the same kind of brush. It's just outrageous that the media and the governments allow that to happen. Because, you know, if it's a Christian, how come there's not a Christian terrorist or a Jewish terrorist or a Buddhist terrorist?
Interestingly, that narrative started to become corrected a little bit. You know, that Liverpool terrorist has been categorized and classified as a Christian convert. And I'm not saying, and actually, Jalf, you know, for me, religion shouldn't be mentioned in these lunatic, distorted views. You know, it isn't.
That's the whole purpose, and that's the whole point. Why talk about the individual who's disturbed? Why do you want to create more division within people's minds? Because it's deliberate. That's why.
All right.
It's
anyway,
deliberate.
Listen, I'm not interested in your conspiracy theories, right, Jack?
It's not about conspiracy theory, man. It's just a simple, sensible point. Why ban people, Islamists? Who's got the authority to do that if it wasn't agreed? You can't just go and write something. You want to be politically correct, Ammar. You can't say anything about anything. Going back to the discussion we had right at the start of the show, how come you can then go and group 2 billion people with the same brush? How is that okay? You know, it's been acceptable within the media and within the governments on allowing it to be accepted as well. So that needs to change as well. You want to have political correctness, then have political correctness all across the board. Don't pick and choose what political correctness should be.
Listen, I'm not getting involved in political correctness stuff, because otherwise I'll be, because we're broadcasting, we need to be very careful as to what we say. The point is this, Jalf, right? I was born and brought up in this country. I love this country. And in fact, you'll never hear anybody say that more than me in this region. I love the Northeast. I was born, brought up here, and everything that I primarily do is for the betterment of the Northeast. You know, I've broken down barriers. We've experienced, as you've said, so much, Jalf, been in positions. We've met every single prime minister consistently for the last 2 decades. You know, we've met Bill Gates. We've been in places and spaces that lots of people could only imagine. However, we have experienced firsthand racism, and it's wrong, and it's not right, and it should never be dismissed. And the only way you're going to tackle it is things like me wearing a uniform, Jalf, because that is equality, that is equal opportunity, right? As in, I'm using that as an example until people can see and feel and sort of go, I can be part of that. I want to be part of that. You know, every time I've worn a uniform, people go, how can I get one? And it's like, they don't just give it away. You know, it's the thing.
You have to earn it.
You have to earn it and contribute to community, contribute to our fellow people, and contribute inclusively. So for me, it is very much a case of, you know, let's come together. Let's have these conversations, and let's respect and appreciate the challenges and the experiences of individual. You know, I remember, and I've said this so many times, I remember growing up, and I, you know, sort of, primarily all of my friends were white at the time. I mean, I went through various periods of, you know, being with that community and whatever else. And I remember the guys going, oh, Packy this and Packy that, but not you, Ammar, you're one of us. And I was like, oh, that's great. I feel I'm one of you, you know, as opposed to calling them out and going, listen, I'm still a Packy, you know, I'm still a Pakistani, and I'm still offended. And it's not right. But then the key thing is, it's those people in power that allow stuff to happen, Jalf. That's the failings.
That's just what I've said.
you know, it's the people in so that allowed for those conversations. It's those people who didn't stand up and stand out. So actually, you know, we're picking on cricket this week, but let's go back to football. That still remains one of the most racist places in the world.
It's a lot better than what it was, Amal. A lot, million times better. I think football has seen a fundamental change.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not saying it is. The world's a lot better than what it was, Jeff. They used to put people on boats and ship them to America and get them to, like, you know, people used to be slaves. The world's a lot better. It still doesn't mean that it's where it needs to be.
No, of course not. There's a long way to go.
So let's help make this happen. Let's have a positive conversation. Let's share those lived experiences, because a lot of the time, the initiatives, and so Yorkshire Cricket Board, you know, they'll bring someone in who isn't Pakistani, and, you know, they'll go, right, well, you know, here's my view. And part of the challenge is that some of the people, sadly, that are brought into these conversations, all they're trying to do is to try and fit in and be white, as opposed to sort of recognizing the fact that they're of color, because you just want to fit in. So you'll say the things to fit in, as opposed to representing the views adequately and appropriately, which is critical to the success of this. Anyway, that's that. And hopefully it'll bring some good. And hopefully the narrative will not get distracted by something that somebody said somewhere else, and then try to discredit everything that's been said. Next week is our curry club. Jalf, we have 2 or 3 winners coming to share their experiences, which is what we're talking about. Positively talking about, you know, here's someone who's made a difference, they've been recognized, and let's learn from them. Let's connect from them. Let's use them as role models. Let's use them to inspire and help aspire other individuals.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so that's on Thursday. It's sold out, but if you want to be on the waiting list, get in touch with Asian Business Connections at abconnections.org. Alongside that, there's a number of things that are going on. There's a big consultation around business support that ABC is working on, and with the All Parliamentary Party group on BAME Business. And equally, the Christmas is coming. Have you got your order in for goose, turkey?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna just hopefully there's gonna be some around at that time when we really need it, as opposed to going and shopping it in advance.
And how's the restaurants, Jeff? What's the biggest challenges?
There's slight issues creeping in with the supply chain, which is worrying.
Right.
Because, you know, you can't get certain things, it's going to be big trouble. Like, for example, papadums.
What?
So what can you do? You ring all the suppliers, and every supplier is in the same situation. You then, you know, try and stock up, and you know, you just hope that the boat does arrive. We just hope that it somehow comes through.
Would you not fly them in?
Well, look, we try to just contact the suppliers, but it's when people don't have it and the ships can't come. You know, we're not wholesalers. We're just a restaurant at the end of the day. So trying to fly something, it's not easy, Ammar. You know, you have to have licenses, and you have to do this, find a supply, and there's a lot of people ahead of us doing that anyway. So let them do their thing, and we just hope once they do get it, we can somehow, you know, be quite priority on that list, because we're kind of got decent purchasing power. So we just have to see what happens, see where we are. But I just hope that doesn't continue, and that doesn't get bigger and bigger and wider. You know, if you imagine that Nando's had to close because they didn't have chicken and things like that. So let's
We
hope
did.
that.
Funnily enough, we had a conversation the other day where both I and others had been to KFC because the one at Cowgate is obviously halal, and it was it didn't have any chicken.
It's horrendous, the situation. I just hope that the government get together and they sort out this transportation issue, which is still seems to be a big thing, and obviously coming out of Brexit, it's just caused so many issues on the port, Ammar. They really do need to get this economy back on track and give us some kind of normality back. Because you know, the longer it takes, just the more disruption. And imagine how much loss has been made in the economy.
It's crazy.
But
Crazy.
I think we're coming to the end of our show. So
yeah, we are. So are you at Brentford tomorrow, Jeff?
it's a whole match, isn't it? Yeah, so I'll be there.
I'm going.
Yeah. Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So what shall I see you afterwards, and then
Well,
I'll come and work for you. I'll come and work for you.
Well, either way, look, I'll see where you are in the boxes. I'll try and wave at you. I'll try and catch a glimpse of you.
I'm just with Amanda on that, so
Excellent.
yeah, I'll give you a wave.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look out for you.
Yeah, and I didn't even know Brentford were a football team, but but I'd be surprised if we beat them. Anyway, that's a different conversation altogether. You've been listening to Ammar and
Jalf
live on our weekly radio show. On a serious note, inclusion, do reach out to ABC. We've launched the campaign a couple of years ago, Inclusion by Default. And Jalf and I will be back with some guests next week. Goodbye for now.
and goodbye from me. Thank you. Bye.